My sister forced me to babysit her 7 kids for her 3rd lavish wedding, but what I discovered that week turned her perfect life into ruin.
I, a 34-year-old woman, have an older sister, Carol, who is 37 and not a very good person.
We grew up dirt poor because our dad passed away when we were very young, and our mother couldn't be bothered to stop drinking to find a decent job that paid well enough. My paternal grandparents wanted nothing to do with us, and my mom was orphaned as a teen, so things were pretty bleak. I chose to work hard to build a future for myself as a high school teacher, but Carol went a different way and chose to work hard to find rich men and baby trap them. She used to work as a bartender at a nightclub frequented by men with corporate jobs who were desperate to look younger than they were. That's where she picked up her first husband, and there was no looking back for her. She has 7 kids and was about to get married for the 3rd time last week. Her oldest child is her 15-year-old son, and her youngest is 4 years old. She had 2 kids with her first husband, a 15-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter. Then she had triplets, 3 sons, with her second husband, all 10 years old now. With her most recent partner, she has 2 daughters, aged 6 and 4, respectively. All her partners have been wealthy men in their 40s or 50s, and she's never missed her mark. However, her most recent partner was a 40-year-old man, and he made her wait before jumping at the chance to marry an attractive woman. This was mostly because, after 5 pregnancies, my sister looks considerably older, and the fact that she's pushing 40 doesn't help either. She's still pretty for her age, but her fiancé, Dean, was not really into the idea of marriage. It took a lot of effort from her to make him agree to marry her. I knew her routine, though. She'd already baby-trapped him by lying about taking the morning after pill, and now they had 2 kids. The next step was to push for marriage, which she'd managed easily with her last 2 husbands. Then, within a few months or years, she'd get one of her friends to flirt with him, and of course, the man would end up sleeping with her friend. She'd get a ton of money out of the divorce settlement, alimony, and child support. She was much more well off than I was. We kept in touch, but I never took any money from her, and we didn't talk more than once or twice a month. Even then, we just talked about visiting Mom, who now lives with her brother. Her brother was the one who took care of us whenever our mother was too drunk. Once we completed our education, or at least I did, since my sister skipped college and decided to move out, he convinced Mom to sell the house and move in with him and his family. We visited them sometimes, and that's the only time we talked. Recently, about 2 weeks ago, she got in touch with me and said she wanted me to babysit her kids for 1 week since she needed to prepare for her wedding. I didn't know how I was going to take care of 7 kids all by myself, but I thought I'd make some extra money, so I agreed to do it for her as long as she paid me. I quoted $2,500 for the week, which I thought was a fair demand. I might have even been charging less than a real babysitter, but she argued with me, saying it was way too much and that, since I'm her sister, I shouldn't be charging her anything at all. It's not like my sister couldn't afford it because she's been living with her partners rent-free and makes a ton of money from her divorces. It seemed uncharacteristically stingy of her to not even pay me $2,500. After some negotiations, she agreed to pay me $1,000 right away and the rest a day before the wedding, which seemed reasonable to me, so I agreed to watch her kids as she got married. My mother and I have never been invited to any of her weddings because she always insists that it's going to be a private affair, but that's not true. I know that because her past weddings have all been lavish, and she doesn't invite us because she doesn't want us around. That's all it is. I felt bad the first time, but after that, I stopped caring because she evidently didn't consider us family anymore. After that, neither did I. So, agreeing to watch her kids was purely a transactional thing and not something I was doing out of love for my older sister. I thought she'd realize that. 2 days before she was supposed to get married, I decided to remind her about the money, but then she did a 180 and told me she'd changed her mind and wasn't going to pay me the rest. She said I could consider it part of the wedding gift. I was furious and tried to argue with her, but she told me she wasn't interested in negotiations anymore, and her decision was final. That pissed me off even more, and I decided I wasn't going to let this slide. I already hadn't been on good terms with my sister after we'd moved out because, as soon as she got hold of a rich husband, she started burning bridges. I was the first one she distanced herself from because suddenly we weren't good enough for her to associate with. It was disgusting and shallow, and maybe I do resent her for what happened then. I'd been watching her kids for 3 days already and had even asked my boyfriend to help me out. I overheard 2 of her oldest kids discussing a guy named Lucas, name changed. I had my headphones on, so they were whispering about it right in front of me, and they had no idea I could hear them. They were talking about how this guy named Lucas hadn't visited to see them like he'd promised, and Carol's second oldest joked that he might show up at the wedding as a waiter, like he did the last time. I came to the conclusion that this Lucas might be some guy Carol had been seeing for a while alongside her current partner, but I chose to keep my mouth shut because what my sister did was none of my business. It never had been and still wasn't. Her last divorce had been finalized over 2 years back, and I hadn't spoken up about her ways back then, nor was I going to do it now. But after Carol decided she was going to scam me out of the money she owed me, the bitterness became too overwhelming, and I decided to show up at her wedding. I made my boyfriend stay at home with the kids, drove to the venue, and somehow got hold of my sister's fiancé. I'd seen him in her Facebook photos, so I could recognize him. I made sure my sister wasn't around, and the ceremony hadn't begun. Once that was done, I pulled him aside and told him all about Carol, how she scammed and baby-trapped men and how he'd fallen right into that trap. I also mentioned what I'd heard her kids talking about and told him to go through her phone, emails, and texts. I couldn't prove the first part since I'd only heard her talk about it once or twice, bragging about how she'd scammed her first husband and how she was going to live a nice life with his money. We were visiting our mom at the time and had to share a room at our uncle's house, and that's how we ended up sharing our lives. I was horrified back then and stopped looking at her the same way since. It was just my word against hers. However, I did know that if her fiancé looked through her phone, he might find something suspicious. I'd shown up right in the nick of time, just half an hour before the ceremony was supposed to start. The man looked stunned but thanked me for what I told him nevertheless and said he'd look into it but that I needed to leave right away, which I did. I didn't wait to find out what happened because I knew that eventually my sister would come by, and I'd learn all about it anyway. It happened sooner than I'd expected because, within an hour or so, she bombarded me with texts about how I'd ruined her plan and said I was going to pay for it. She showed up at my house in the evening, screaming hysterically while accusing me of ruining her life, but I told her to take her kids and leave as fast as she could, or else I'd call CPS. She did leave, and I managed to catch a glimpse of another guy in the car she'd arrived in, so I guess what her kids had been saying had some truth to it. I don't know what the exact situation is as of now, but I guess I'll find out. They left with the kids, and I didn't think I'd hear from them later, but I did. Last evening, almost 2 days after the wedding day, my sister sent me a text saying that she and her 7 kids were now going to suffer because of what I'd done. She claimed that she truly loved this guy and didn't have any intention of scamming anyone this time and that she was trying to start afresh, but I'd ruined her last shot at redemption. I don't know how much truth there is to that claim, but I also don't have any proof against it, apart from whoever I saw in the car the other day. She did seem pretty hysterical when she came back to pick up her kids, so she might be telling the truth. I don't know. I've decided not to apologize to Carol or say anything to her at all because she's just not worth it. I don't think she could ever change because someone who's only tried to scam men for the last 20 years is capable of just that and nothing more. I spoke to my boyfriend, and even he was doubtful of whether she was telling the truth or not, especially because of what I told him about there being a potential other boyfriend that she'd been seeing alongside her partner. The kids seemed to be familiar with this Lucas guy as well. It didn't seem likely that she was in love or loyal to her partner, so I think I just saved the poor guy from being scammed by my sister, and that's what she was so mad about. On another note, my mother has asked me to come visit her, which is weird because she usually never gets in touch with me specifically. She's in her 60s now and likes to be on her own, so I don't know what she might have to say. I just really hope it's nothing related to Carol or the wedding that I ruined because the last thing I need is a sermon on sibling rivalry, as if I'm a toddler and not an adult woman capable of making my own decisions. So I'm back to talk about my really messed up family because I just learned a couple of things about them that made me realize how I knew absolutely nothing about these people. They're far more insane than I'd expected, and I really just don't know what to think of them anymore. I visited my mother 3 days ago, and I'm still reeling from that visit because, oh my god, they're messed up. I'll try to keep it short here, but I'm still struggling to make sense of this huge revelation, so I'll ask you guys to please bear with me right now. My mother had called me to discuss my sister and her relationship, just like I'd expected, and she told me that I needed to talk to her partner and fix the situation. I was annoyed that she was choosing to take Carol's side and told her the truth as well, about how she was nothing more than a gold-digging scammer, but she didn't seem surprised and even said that she knew about all of it, which was a shock to me. Then I got a much bigger shock when she told me that not only was she aware of it, but she was also in on it and had actually been funded by Carol for the last 10 years. Apparently, Carol would send her uncle money every month to cover mom's expenses, and so my mom didn't have a problem with whatever Carol was doing to get that money. Not only that, but she also explained that this Lucas guy had been Carol's boyfriend since her waitress days, and even he was in on my sister's way of life. He was okay with it and was on good terms with all of her kids, acting like a father to them himself. Carol really did love Lucas, and I guess he loved her too. Her kids would live with Lucas in a separate house so that her boyfriends wouldn't find out about the kids. They even had a nanny to look after the 7, but unfortunately, their nanny had fallen sick with the flu right before the wedding and couldn't come to work. Neither could Lucas take care of the kids since this was coming at a really bad time for them financially. They'd been living beyond their means for a while now, and so they had to cut costs. This also meant that Lucas had to find a job for himself, or they'd run out of money soon. This entire situation explained why they had approached me to babysit in the first place. Their hope had been that I would simply agree to do it without charging anything, out of familial obligation or sisterly loyalty. However, when I stood my ground and insisted on being compensated for my time and effort in caring for 7 children, my sister flatly refused to pay me what she owed. That single act of defiance on her part, her unwillingness to honor our financial agreement, became the catalyst that unraveled everything and led to this catastrophic mess. The revelations were absolutely mind-blowing, and I found myself completely stunned by the scope of information being laid bare before me. But apparently, this elaborate arrangement had been their reality from the very beginning, operating like a well-oiled machine behind closed doors. What shocked me most was discovering that everyone had been complicit in this scheme. My sister wasn't working alone, she was actually funding an entire network of people: my mother, my uncle, and even her long-term boyfriend Lucas. The only person excluded from this financial web was me. I experienced conflicting emotions about this exclusion. On one hand, part of me felt a twinge of something, perhaps longing or regret, thinking about how it would have been nice to be taken care of financially, to have that security and support. But my mother's explanation cut deep when she admitted the cold, calculated reason behind my exclusion: they simply didn't want the money divided among more people. It was purely a business decision to them. More troubling still, my sister had previously confided the truth about her schemes to me years ago, yet I had never demanded anything from her or threatened to expose her activities. They had interpreted my silence as complicity, taking for granted that I would keep their secrets indefinitely regardless of how they treated me, until the moment I finally broke that silence. My mother told me that I needed to do something because this was supposed to be my sister's final husband since she was getting too old to get rich old men to fall for her. With 7 kids of her own, she herself didn't want to continue living this way and was genuinely considering turning to more honest ways. This was supposed to be her last husband, and she'd put in a lot of effort to win him over, but he canceled the wedding at the very last minute because of what I'd said. Apparently, he hadn't even checked her phone or tried to verify, he just asked Carol about it, and when she denied it, he decided to leave her at the altar and walked off. My mother is desperate and requested me several times to talk to the guy and make sure that he takes her back. I still haven't gotten around to doing anything because this is all just so damn weird and messed up. I don't know what to make of this situation, and I feel like I shouldn't have taken in her kids and agreed to babysit them in the first place. Maybe then I would never have been caught up in this mess and would have remained blissfully unaware, but now I can't stop thinking about what I've learned, and I feel like I have to do something, or else I might go crazy. So, as I said, I had to do something, and I ended up visiting Carol's now ex-fiancé. I didn't know what I was going to say to him, and my head was completely and totally blank as I was entering his house. My mother had given me the address so that I could go speak to him. Surprisingly, he let me in, so maybe he wanted to get some things off his chest as well. He was nice to me and even offered me coffee, but I only wanted to talk. Before I could even think things through, I'd asked him why he'd broken off the marriage without even verifying what I told him. He explained that the terrified face Carol had made the second he asked about Lucas was all he needed to know. He confessed that he'd always felt a little dicey about Carol since she claimed she had no kids, but sometimes he'd catch her shopping for stuff only kids would need, so he had his doubts. But he never thought to investigate because he was in love with her. The second I told him the truth about my sister, he realized he'd been living in a false paradise and decided to dump her then and there. Then I did something I hadn't even considered earlier. I asked him not to take any legal action against my sister. He looked a little taken aback but agreed to it since he also wanted to get over all of this as soon as possible, and getting revenge was the last thing on his mind. He didn't want to go after her, he just wanted to stay away, which was fair enough. I knew that my family would be screwed if he decided to come after her with lawyers, and he was a rich guy, so it would be really bad for my sister, my mother, and I guess me too. I wasn't going to ask him to take her back and fix the situation because I didn't think this relationship was salvageable anyway. I kept quiet about my sister's lifestyle for several years, and I was ready to keep it quiet for more because I really just didn't want any more drama. Besides, the first 2 husbands of hers were aged douchebags anyway, and they deserved what they got. But this guy seemed halfway decent, so I guess I did the right thing. I did my sister and my mother a final favor by making sure he doesn't sue her, but this is it. This is the final favor. I don't think I can, in good conscience, continue to associate with these people anymore. I've already done enough for them, and I don't think I'm much of a good person either because I guess I was complicit in helping my sister hide her wrongdoings. I justified it to myself by saying those men deserved it, but that doesn't make me, my sister, or my mother any less wrong. All of us are messed up, and that's the reality, but I don't want to do this anymore for my family's sake because this is just so much drama and anxiety. I lead a nice life, and I don't understand why my sister couldn't have done the same for herself, but whatever. I don't want to judge her anymore, and neither do I want to judge my mother. All I can do is cut myself off from them, and that's what I'm going to do because that meeting with Carol's ex made me realize that if I wanted out of this mess, then I'd have to cut myself free from these people. There was no other way. I don't even know how I'd held on to them for so long to begin with, given our strained relationship. I guess I just wanted to feel like I still had a family. I don't want that anymore. Today, I resolved to communicate my decision to my mother, a choice that marked a significant turning point in my life. I telephoned her to declare my intention to permanently sever ties with our family, requesting that they refrain from contacting me henceforth. I recounted my discussion with Carol's former fiancé, explaining that while he assured me he would not pursue legal action against her, he was resolute in his decision not to reconcile. My mother's reaction was one of evident disappointment, her distress palpable because I failed to persuade him to reconsider. Yet, she did not challenge my choice or plead for me to remain connected. Instead, she acknowledged my autonomy, stating that if I believed this separation would bring me greater contentment, she had no further words to offer. Abruptly, she ended the call without another syllable, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Her apparent indifference did not surprise me, for I had long recognized the self-serving nature of my family. They no longer saw value in me, as I offered nothing to their material or emotional needs. This realization was profoundly sorrowful, yet I found no purpose in dwelling on my grief. Resigned to the inevitability of our estrangement, I accepted that my path forward lay apart from them, a choice both painful and liberating. I had hoped for a semblance of familial warmth, but their apathy confirmed my decision. Moving on, I aimed to build a life free from their chaos, anchored by the love and stability I've found elsewhere. I also told my sister the same, but I texted her instead since I was in no mood to deal with her hysterics and theatrics on the phone. She pretty much told me to go to hell. She once again accused me of ruining her life on purpose just because I was jealous and couldn't stand to see her happy. Then she told me that I'd never find anyone to love me because I'm a miserable and bitter woman. She doesn't know I've been with my boyfriend for 3 years straight, and we're still going steady. We're even planning to get married in a year or so, but it's fine. I guess I am kind of disappointed that neither of them seem to care, but I couldn't have expected anything better from them either. So, this is how it is. On the bright side, I never have to deal with their drama ever again, and she can live it up with her 7 kids. Good luck to them. I was finally able to move in with my ex-boyfriend, now husband, a couple of months back. He had to travel a lot for work, but now he's working a desk job, so we thought it was the perfect time to get hitched and live together. He's my family now, and I couldn't be happier about it. I haven't spoken to anyone from my biological family for a year, and I intend on keeping it that way. They haven't tried to reach out to me either, and I'm thankful for that. My husband and I are all we need.